Dan Bongino, thanks for having me. Good to be with you again.
Tom, do you eat fish because they don't have feelings, or do you just like the taste? You don't have to. He's like totally confused.
Oh,
That's
man,
a great line.
I tuned in for the wrong hour.
You did. That's so funny because Jim's like, you really want to play this before Tom goes on? I'm like, yeah, hell yeah. This is like Tom, I've known Tom for a long time. Tom and I are personal friends. He's a great activist. He's over at Judicial Watch. And what I like most about Tom, folks, is kind of like Dan Horowitz and others. He doesn't really care about your party affiliation. If you're not doing the right thing for the country, I promise you're going to be on their list of people. Then you're not going to, it's not a friendly one. Tom, what's going on right now with Donald Trump is an atrocity. I don't care if you support DeSantis, Nikki Haley, Tim Scott, candidly, Joe Biden. When you erase the rule of law in a country, this is a clear event of political targeting, and it's a former president. You better be damn well sure that you got your legal ducks lined up in a row, even if it is a flimsy charge like it is yesterday. Yet when you read the indictment, which I know you looked at and I looked at and everyone else looked at, it's not even that long. I'm really stretching as a really objective guy. And trust me, folks, Tom's group's gone after Republicans who've been in shady stuff too. I mean, no, you screw around, they're going to go find you. Are we missing something? I mean, was there something in the indictment you saw that jumped out like, oh, they got him now?
Yeah, I mean, you raise a good point because you're always worried in the back of your mind, well, maybe there's something here and we're not aware of it and they have access to certain information. And it's even worse than we thought. It's even weaker than his critics thought. Right. There's no there. It's an indictment based on non-crimes in politics. And I mean, the core of it is they arrested him, and he was arrested yesterday. He was a political prisoner.
Right.
And he still is under the jurisdiction of the court.
Correct.
And restricted as a result. They wouldn't even tell him what the crime was. Yeah, you mess with these business records in pursuit of a felony. We're not going to tell you what the felony is because we don't have to. You'll find out about it at trial. I mean, Putin and Chairman Xi must be laughing at the hypocrisy of the United States that our political class thinks this is appropriate and that we're all not that we all aren't united, and I mean Democrat, Republican, in this against this attack on our system. This is something, this is like, oh, there's a fire or there's been an attack. And aren't we supposed to unite? We have to unite against Bragg's abuse here. And if the courts can't figure it out, then Congress has got to do something. Anyone in a position of power is to use all their authorities to try to protect Trump from being a political prisoner in a way that restricts his liberty such that our country is ruined in terms of election systems.
We're talking to Tom Fitton from Judicial Watch. Tom, you're literally, not figuratively, uniquely positioned, I believe, to answer this question. You said something important there. I was going to ask a different question, but you cued me onto something. Where are these lefty groups like the ACLU and others that for decades, whether you agreed with them or not, I mean, the ACLU, if I'm correct here, their first defense was of the Ku Klux Klan. I mean, a group we can all agree, abhorrent, grotesque. We get it. But the ACLU said, you know what? We get it. Disgusting set of values. But if we don't defend speech that is disgusting but not illegal, then there's no point to these laws. You run a group that functions on donations, and yet through the years, your group, like I said, has gone after unethical and corrupt behavior, Republican or Democrat, and you've been very successful. You've had no problems, which says to me that conservatives genuinely care about these kinds of principles because your group is probably one of the most powerful out there. Yet the liberals, and this is where I think you and I both agree, this is why the country has a problem. The liberals have given up on that altogether. They're like, we're not about principles anymore. We really don't care. This is straight up hierarchy. We're going to take power. We're going to abuse it. We need to subjugate people. You're the subjects. Read it and weep.
Well, I'm not nearly as nice or charitable in the interpretation of the ACLU's history as you are. I think they've been always a creature of the left, and to the degree they have promoted First Amendment speech, it was tactical, not principled, and we're seeing that today. And the left doesn't believe in anything other than power. So sometimes, achieving power means they defend these constitutional principles and our civil liberties. But as soon as they get in the way, Katie bar the door, and they'll jail you, and they'll jail your family, and they'll jail your presidential candidate, and they'll jail your state legislators, and they'll jail your citizen activists who are thinking of ways to challenge an election, as has been done since the beginning of the country's founding. They'll jail anyone. And First Amendment be danged, all your other civil liberties be danged. And as far as President Trump is concerned, he is a crime victim. He's a political prisoner. And all of this is a creation of the extremist left that has risen, talk about a contagion in the Democratic Party. I mean, there's this storm front, I point out, from Georgia through Washington up to New York, of leftist politicians and leftist jurisdictions thinking of ways to abuse their awesome power. I don't mean awesome in a positive way, but in a dangerous way to jail people. I've seen it up close here in Washington, D.C. And to be clear, don't think that Bragg investigation is any more legitimate or substantial than what's going on here in D.C. under the corrupted Justice Department or in Fulton County, Georgia. They're all, three sides of the same coin, practically speaking.
Yeah, we're talking to Tom Fitton from Judicial Watch. You've seen him on Fox and other networks out there speaking about government corruption. Otherwise, a good guest to have. Tom, are we in the midst of kind of a cold national divorce here? Not a warm or a hot one where there's actually been a divorce, i.e. we're no longer part of the United States, but we're seeing now, states like California that say, listen, we just don't respect borders. Come to our, state, you violate the law, you come here illegally, federal law, and you get new rights. Remember, sanctuary cities, it's not just that, you're absolved or pardoned, let's say, of some crime. You're given actually special rights, work permits and things like that, taxpayer-funded benefits. And then you get the state of Arizona under Jan Brewer before, a prior Republican governor, who decided that they were going to enforce immigration law. And then they said, no, you're not allowed to do that. Which says to me that we're going through kind of this cold national divorce right now. And I think kind of the denouement of this is the other day when Ron DeSantis from Florida said, listen, we're not going to participate in any extradition. That wasn't an issue. He was going to voluntarily surrender. But I ask you, what if he didn't? I mean, what if he didn't surrender and stayed in Mar-a-Lago? I mean, are we looking at everything we thought wouldn't happen, Tom? I guess what I'm getting at has happened. And so I'm not willing to say these what ifs anymore and treat them as hypotheticals. Are we looking at some kind of cold national divorce that gets warmer going forward?
That's right. I mean, if there's enough of these politicized prosecutions, I don't know how politicians or those subjected to this lawlessness are going to respond. President Trump is following all the rules. That's not a guarantee on either side of the aisle. And I don't think it's a divorce. I mean, other than, maybe the American people being the poor wife at home raising the kids and doing everything right while the husband is out there gallivanting. I think this is a revolutionary period. This rising communism is targeting all of our institutions and the rules and the laws that most of us are been respecting and are used to defending and promoting and relying on to protect our republic. They're attacking all the basics that we're supposed to believe as Americans. They're rejecting. I mean, it's not un-American. It's anti-American. It's not unconstitutional. It's anti-constitutional.
We're talking to Tom Fitton from Judicial Watch. Tom, I got a few minutes left here, but you've been involved in this business for a very long time, a lot longer than me, but twice, three times as long, maybe. I mean, this is your business.
I'm an old man, relatively speaking.
Yeah, you look good, though, man. You look good. I see you've been throwing around the steel. It's the most honest thing in life. I like that. Steel never lies to you. Have you ever, I get this question a lot, because there's a certain affirmation bias in the president. Oh, it's the worst it's ever been, the worst it's ever been. But I was saying to my audience before you came on in the last hour, this is the worst it's ever been in my 48 years on the... I've never seen the United States so divided and at each other's throats like it is now. Question one. Question two, if it is there any coming back from this? Or is this really... Are we at the first... Are we at just the beginning of the end right here for the United States as we know it?
Well, I'm both, I'm upset about what's happening, obviously. These are dark times for the country, there's no doubt. I mean, you'd have to go back to the beginning of the last century when you had mass arrests, targeting the socialists and under the Wilson regime, and obviously during the Civil War. But here, I think you get the right leadership, things can be fixed insanely, surprisingly quickly. For all of the critics of Trump, both on Republican and Democrat, he was the most consequential president in modern history. And imagine if there was a different speaker than Ryan during his first 2 years. And even just the commitment of McCarthy to kind of investigating things that previously hadn't been seen from House leadership is a remarkable change. And, remember that election, aside from the disputes about the election, it specifically came down, if you believe the numbers, to 44,000 votes. So it's always a close run thing. And just so as things can always go bad and south each and every way, things can also be resolved in a positive way. I mean, for instance, there are a lot more unborn babies and children alive right now, thanks to Roe being overturned. And I don't know about you, sir, but, maybe that makes all of the heartache that we're facing now worth it.
That's such a good point. I brought that up earlier in the show on the podcast today. North Carolina just flipped to a supermajority Republican. Florida is now no longer a swing state. We have Twitter being taken over by Elon, moving in a free speech direction. We took over the House. Ron Johnson and won re-election in Wisconsin, and we won another rep over there. So I'm with you. I'm long on the United States, and I'm glad to hear you agree that we can fix this stuff. And Trump's presidency, the Abraham Accords, the tax cuts, the getting a hold of the Federal Register and regulations. This is real stuff. Tom, I got to run. Come back. I don't know why we don't have you more. Come back on the show. We love having you. We really appreciate the work you do over at Judicial Watch, too. So thanks a lot for joining us.
Well, thank you, and happy Easter.